Hello and welcome to another edition of The Week That Was, a weekly program where we catch up with the headlines of the previous week. This week we take up the week from 21st to 27th September, and on our table we have the Narco Cops of Hyderabad in Goa. We look at issues surrounding the primary schools in Goa, and we look at the massive protests, and finally with the scrapping of Goa Land Development and Building Construction Regulation, which is a major victory for the people. To discuss this and other stories, I have with me the group editor of Herald publication, Mr. Sujay Gupta. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
First up, we take up on 21st September, the crack Narco Cops of Hyderabad swoop down on Goa, drug gangs go scurrying. Now, in this story, we got the feedback from the DGP and he said it's a routine visit, but they had much more on their table. And also, we have a series of stories in the Herald in that week, where the second story talks about, on 23rd September, the second story talks about Hyderabad Narco Cops finally get remand to take Steve after a 2-day health pause, and there was also a story on September 22nd.
Yes. The thing is, yes, Herald has been in the forefront of essentially reporting the great work done by the Hyderabad police, because they have consistently ensured that the heat is on the drug lobby and the drug gangsters. Because the thing is, we must understand that the Hyderabad police got into the Goa drug investigations because of a major NDPS case that they cracked in Hyderabad.
Yeah.
They unearthed it.
Yeah.
There were actually a series of three cases that were there.
Yeah.
One was a Nigerian who was caught in Bangalore, whose base was in Goa,
Yeah.
who was caught supplying drugs in Bangalore and then subsequently in Hyderabad. Then there was one person named Narendra Arya, if I'm not mistaken, who allegedly, and the case has been booked against him, and he's also in jail right now, or in custody right now. And Arya happens to be, according to the Hyderabad police, a very pro in the dark net. Now, for those who are uninitiated,
Yeah.
the dark net or the dark web is just like our web, but it's absolutely impossible to access it because there's a series of layers and filters, and the dark web is used consistently all across the world for arms trade, for drug dealings, and so on and so forth, where payments are made through cryptocurrency, and there are crypto platforms through which trading is done. Now the thing is, this has been unearthed. Now these are two cases, and the third is Pritesh Narayan Borkar of Anjuna, who was of course again picked up as one of the major suppliers of drugs to Hyderabad, and he, during his interrogation, referred to about 6 or 7 names, and it is those people who the Hyderabad cops are after, of which Steve has already been arrested. Who is reportedly the owner of the Hilltop nightclub.
Yeah.
The search is on for Edwin Nunes, who is the head honcho and runs the Curly's restaurant. Of course, the ownership, of course, there's a grey area of whether he actually owns it or not, but that's not what we are discussing right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point being that the Hyderabad police have done much more towards cracking down on drugs, probably in the last decade, than the Goa police ever has. Okay, that's crystal clear.
Yeah.
And the point is, it all started off with the Commissioner of Police of Hyderabad, C.V. Anand, stating that the cooperation that they had sought and got from the Goa police was wanting. The Goa police reacted sharply and said there was no official communique. Anyway, that little period of uneasiness was tided over, after which the Hyderabad police has been conducting operations primarily with regard to their cases, because they need to arrest people who are accused in their case.
Yeah.
They are now saying that the top brass of the Goa police are giving them the required assistance, but it all boils down to ultimately the proof of the pudding is in the eating. You have to see the results.
Yeah.
And out of all the people who are accused, if they've only got Steve, and they're struggling to get, say, Edwin, for instance, who's literally, one would be safe to assume that he's not shown up. The police are saying that he's on the run, but he's to be technically correct, he's not shown up.
Yeah.
because of which the NDPS case on which he is on bail in Goa, that's the second case. Now that case also, in that case also, the police have now moved for the cancellation of his bail.
Yeah.
So my moot point is that while the Hyderabad police is here, they've tracked in fact, they played a big role in unearthing the fact that the so-called COVID positive certificate furnished by Edwin to evade arrest, that itself was fake.
Yeah.
And that is an exercise that was done jointly, of course, by the Hyderabad and Goa police, but Hyderabad police played a big role in being proactive in that situation. So yes, one would say that yes, the drug lobby in Goa is literally on the run because of the efforts and the professional approach of the Hyderabad police.
Okay. Now on Monday, that is yesterday, September 26, also there is a report
Yeah.
which says that Hyderabad's relentless assault on drug kingpins has made the Goa force sit up.
Right.
So it has had an effect on the Goa police. Now
Yes,
they
yes.
have to.
They need to, because see, do understand that the Goa police right now is now surrounded by two elite forces. One is the CBI, which is investigating the Sonali Phogat murder case,
Yeah.
and the Hyderabad police, which is investigating the narco case, which is originated in their territory.
Yeah.
But most of the accused happen to be here. There is a third case, which is the NDPS case of the Anjuna police, connected to the Sonali Phogat case.
Yeah.
So we must understand that the NDPS part of the Sonali Phogat related case
Yeah.
is still handled by the Anjuna police. The Sonali Phogat murder case is being handled by the CBI,
CBI.
and the NDPS case in Hyderabad, where the prime accused is Pritesh Borkar, is being handled by Hyderabad police. So this is the way the three cases are divided. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Now moving on to another story on September 21st, that was last Wednesday. Herald has a story with regard to the government primary schools, and there is a series of stories that Herald has covered with regard to
correct.
government
That's
primary
correct.
schools.
That's correct.
In this story, we have, as students quit due to lack of school buses in Penne, government primary teachers turn into drivers.
Yes, it's a very sweet story of government primary teachers decided to go literally to the homes of the students, pick them up, and take them to school.
Yeah.
So during this entire series, what we have realized is that much as we, there is the negative, so to speak, side to it, where the primary schools don't have teachers, enrollment is low, the infrastructure of these schools is poor. But while covering these stories, we also realized that we saw a lot of heartwarming episodes also, where there are a lot of local people there, teachers and others there, who have done whatever they could to see that the education systems goes on, the children don't lose out. Now, this act of teachers going to the homes of students and picking them up is a very touching gesture.
Yeah.
So it just shows that amidst the maybe say the decay or the slowdown of governance or the lack of it in those places, we see these angels coming up and really helping a hand, giving a helping hand. For instance, we did a story today where the ADEI, one education officer, he goes to a particular school and sees that there are no teachers there. So he decides to take a class, and up to midday he takes a class, and after class he doesn't go home, he goes hunting for where the teacher is, because this teacher is also posted in another school. So this particular ADI goes up to that other school and asks the teacher, why are you not there? So the parents of that school say, no, if we leave this teacher, how will our children study? So in this, what happens is, in these acts of goodness, we also see the problems and the lack of infrastructure, and in the acts of infrastructure and in the incidents of lack of infrastructure and decay that we see, we also see acts of goodness.
Now, in our story 3, that is on September 22nd, now here there is a spillover of the previous week's story, where Nuve voters, they unleashed their defection wrath with protests outside Ale Siqueira's house.
Yes.
Now, unfortunately, this was planned to take place in the constituencies of all the 8 MLAs who changed over from Congress to BJP, but did not take off for some reason.
Right. Well, firstly, let us ask how much of it was spontaneous, how much of it is serious. But from whatever happened in Nuve, it looks that the people who were there were genuine and serious.
Yeah.
it all boils down to not just the numbers of people who come there, but the people who come there with genuine intentions. And if there is a genuine people's anger, then it should be sustained and it should be visible on the streets.
Yeah.
The very fact that Nuve happened, maybe because the people there were more concerned or it hit them more, but it not happening in other places is my bigger concern than it happening in Nuve. And not happening in one is not saying you take law into your own hands, but you register your protest in some way or the other, saying, look, this is not right and we will not have it.
Yeah.
At least that kind of messaging needs to be put out in a proper democratic way. And that not happening is a far bigger worry than the limited success of Nuve, let's put it this way.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to another story that we had followed in the previous week, and that has to do with this SIT and the land grabbing cases. On Friday, September 23rd, Herald has a story, the untouchable Mamladar, tainted in Bardes, posted in Mormugao. And this story is about Rahul Desai, who has been booked in 5 cases of land grabbing, and there are several other complaints against him.
Yes, Rahul Desai has indeed been booked in, he's been booked in about 5 cases where I think 3 cases are of sit, maybe 2 cases are of sit and 3 of Mapsa police, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I mean, the Mapsa police has booked him in 3, the sit has booked him in 2, or it's the other way around. Whatever be the case, total of 5 is. Okay. Now, in these 5 cases, he is booked as a kind of accused or a conspirator,
Yeah.
where as a Mamladar, his acts of omission and commission allegedly are that very often he may have cleared papers without the necessary signatures, or signatures have not been verified. There are cases where the mutation has been done in record speed, where see, before you do any mutation of land, you are supposed to send a notice to the original owner to see if the owner has any objections or not.
Yeah.
Now these notices are often, the addresses are not correct. They are either forged or incorrect addresses are put. Sometimes the person who is trying to get the mutation done wrongly or illegally gives his own address, so the notice actually goes to his own house, and he just ignores it, and when the notice does not return, you assume that there are no objections and you pass it.
Yeah.
And mutations have been passed in a record 72 hours. I know of at least 2 cases which we have reported.
Yeah.
Whereas for normal people to get the mutations done, it takes at least a year and a half.
Yeah.
So now, as a Mamladar, if you are booked in so many cases, you are actually booked in an FIR. And it is very surprising that his driver gets arrested for the same case, but he drives away from the matter. That is where the problem is, because the issue is, you are the Mamladar, there are so many other people who got arrested in the same case, and you are not even called for questioning even once, and that is where the problem lies. What kind of investigation are we having where a government officer accused of such wrongdoings, we are not passing judgment on him, but if there is prima facie evidence or prima facie reason to book him in 5 cases and counting, how can you not even call him for questioning? That's my point. And on top of that, you send him to Murbugao as a Mamladar as well. So a tainted Bardes Mamladar moves to Murbugao. So what message are you giving to the people of the Murbugao Taluka?
Yeah.
That we don't care. We'll send a tainted officer to you and you suffer him.
Yeah.
That is the point. Without casting any aspersions on him till he's proven guilty or otherwise. But what must definitely says, if you are booked, if a criminal investigation is going on, you cannot be, instead of being suspended, you cannot be sent to another taluka with the same position.
Yeah. Okay, on the same day, another burning issue, which is just, I mean, the momentum is just building. On September 23rd, on page 2 of Herald, we have the jetty policy, which is now coming into focus. And in this policy, there are just 15 days which have been given, and 500 limit has been put on filing of objections. Now, essentially, the motive of the stated motive of the policy is to control the operations of passenger cruise and other vessels. It says, the policy says that the intent is to do fair business. And the third is, say, they want to develop some infrastructure like floating jetties, pontoons, terminal buildings, and all ancillary infrastructure for tourism. And this policy is put forward by Tourism Department.
The fundamental concern with this policy, one is transparency. Transparency is an issue. We need to know the real reason why the jetties are being built.
Yeah.
this is not me saying asking or you asking. This is what people are asking. We are voicing what people are saying. That people say, look, you need to be transparent, because when you do jetties across the state in so many places, people start smelling a rat.
Yeah.
That why do you need to put a jetty in so many places? Secondly, are you going to do passenger tourism or passenger cruises all across? Can you have cruise terminals in every small jetty that you are talking of, in the small riverine areas of Goa? And that is the point. The other issue is that if you see why people are smelling a rat, because the string of jetties is basically an offshoot or seems very similar to the plans of the Sagarmala project, where you link all the inland waterways for the movement of cargo. Now, the point here is that everybody knows that coal is coming in. Everybody knows that coal has to get transported.
Yeah.
There is a huge wave of protests against the double tracking and movement of coal through the rails.
Yeah.
You also need the water route to ultimately to send that quantum of. So ultimately, it is connecting the rail and the inland waterways and roads, of course, because the NH17 is also getting expanded as part of this.
Yeah.
To set up the entire transport network for the movement of coal through Goa, using Goa as a conduit. This is what people suspect. People say that this is happening, and the whole jetty policy is a disguised attempt to get this stuff in. Now this is a version of the people. Now the government has to again get back, have a proper consensus and clear doubts. That's all we are saying. You have a dialogue and clear doubts. Until that happens, the jetty policy will be opposed.
Now, does these things, like for example, the Goa Land Development and the Building Regulation Act,
Yes.
and the jetty policy, and many other issues that have come up in Goan politics, does it show that the players are already decided, the end is already decided, and then we are making policies to
See, it will not be unfair to have that assumption, because that is a very natural assumption, because there is an interlinking of everything. If you look at the Goa land building and construction rules,
Yeah.
and again people are saying this, that there is an interlinking. These are voices that we hear from people.
Yeah.
And the people who have studied the matter very, very closely. If you look at the Goa land and building construction rules, which were, of course, thankfully, the amendments were scrapped.
Yeah.
And I think credit should go to the TCP minister for listening to the people's voice and doing it. But if you look at the nature of the amendments, it would basically mean that in an area which is earmarked as agricultural land, orchard land, you could go and have a farmhouse over 1,000 square meters. You could have an FAR of 400. You could construct buildings in pristine areas and rural areas. You could have a housing project with a access road which is narrow and not wide. So all this points to concretization and so-called quote-unquote development in very remote areas, changing the entire look of our villages.
Now we move on to another dominant story of the week, which ended up just yesterday. And here also there is a series of articles which have been done by Herald. The first one being on 24th September, which announced that there would be a public meeting, there would be a kind of a seminar where awareness would be raised about the 17 amendments that were proposed to the Goa Land Development and Building Construction.
Yes, this story was done obviously before the decision happened yesterday. So maybe this and the next story of the decision we can club both. And
we can club them.
Yeah.
So on the next day, on 25th September, that was Sunday, there is a story which talks about the Margaon meeting which was held, where there was a group called Goinche Fudle Pidge Khatir on Saturday.
Yes.
They resolved to oppose this amendment. And then we also have a story in the Herald on 26th September, that is Monday, which said that there is a statewide opposition to the action against the TCP amendment, which brings back memories of the regional plan agitation. Now in this, besides the public meetings that were held, there were also resolutions passed in various Gram Sabhas, namely Kandoli, Moira, Lotholi, Karmona, Varka, Benauli, Betalbati, Shishini and others. So we'll take up the build-up in terms of protest, and then at the end we can discuss the scrapping.
Sure. So ever since these amendments were introduced, Gram Sabhas after Gram Sabhas passed a resolution rejecting these amendments. And there was a furious activity happening between various groups like the Goa Foundation, the Rainbow Warriors and others, who all came under that umbrella organization, which essentially is met to protect the future of Goa and protect the future of our children rather. Okay. Now they came up with each amendment and figure out how draconian they could be. And those voices got multiplied, the Gram Sabhas took it up, and in a very short span of time we saw a wave of public resentment happening in the grassroots, which of course reminded us of the regional plan agitation, which again picked up. So if Mr. Vishwajit Rane had not taken this very pragmatic decision to scrap these amendments, these protests would have multiplied and taken the size and the shape of the RP agitation.
Okay. So then we come to the decision of the TCP minister, that is September 27th, and the TCP minister was not in Goa. So it's a banner headline: Sons of the Soil push back land amendments out of their zone, and very nicely put, developments 2B and 16B both go as voices of Goans are heard. Now there are two parts to this story, because two things happened. One was the People's Power makes the government to scrap the proposed amendments to the land development regulation, and the other one is to terminate the controversial 16B on TCP Act, and which is hanging fire, and to which many intentions were ascribed.
See, again, 16B, for all along people have said that the 16B amendment was basically to ensure that stuff done in the regional plan, and then later on, if a particular building or a particular piece of land did not have the zone that was needed basically for construction, that could be factored in later through the 16B section. In a nutshell, I mean, it's not as simplistic as that, but broadly that was the design of it. And of course applications started happening. So it was started during the time of the previous TCP minister Vijay Sardesai, after which Babu Kaulekar came in, and then Vishwajit Rane came in. So TCP ministers came and went, but the applications to change zones under 16B kept on increasing and increasing and increasing.
And these zones included even plots.
These zones also included plots. So which obviously meant that it was basically being used and misused for construction activity through the back door. Bypassing all the laws in existence, the regional plan and so on and so forth. So this ad hocism became the norm rather than an exception. So this had to be scrapped at some point of time, because you could not carry on development in this kind of manner. A holistic planning mechanism is needed, a new template is needed. There has to be proper planning vision and a proper regional plan envisaged, and that should be the binding act or plan for everything. There should be no back doors, no other windows and doors open ajar for anything to slip in. And that's so it's a good decision. And scrapping, as I said a little earlier, scrapping the amendment to the Land and Building Construction Act is not only timely, but it is very just. And I think a committee of experts need to come in, not to decide whether these amendments need to be done or not, but to look at a broader framework of planning that needs to be done, so that our land planning is done in a proper professional way and a transparent way, so that there is no scope for any misuse.
Now, what does one think about the vast activities that were envisaged under this this amendment? Permitting, for example, golf courses, film cities, farmhouses.
Yes, as I briefly mentioned, that is what they want to do.
Higher built-up areas.
That's right.
What does one think about the mind of the government with regard to the future?
See, the mind of the government was essentially to have, say, so-called quote-unquote development at any cost through just major projects which would involve things like this: hotels, golf courses, buildings. Well, in the name of economy and so on and so forth. My issue is we need to do a study, because when you do this, you actually damage a large part of our entire ecosystem. Our riverine system goes, our agricultural system goes, our wetlands go, our khazan lands. So when you do this development, the impact and the after effects of this is enormous. Because by point of view, your hills are broken down, your fields are gone, your agriculture goes completely for a toss. And then when this happens, you see, and the water has no way to go. Our bunds are completely broken. So there will be no agriculture, there will be large scale floods. and nobody is bothered about and your agricultural activity and your basic economic activity that you can get from agriculture is gone. Here people have their own land, they have their fish, they have their farming. My point is they're happy, generations have passed. Now with these kind of other projects that you're trying to bring in, how much of it will actually benefit the people, and also the number of people who are benefiting simply and leading simple content lives through the land or off the land.
And I think it would also do a lot of damage to the unique identity and the culture.
Not to speak of that, of course, there is no doubt about
Goa.
that. That goes completely. That's needless to add, but yes, that's an obvious fallout of this.
Then we move on to another story number 7, that is September 25th. And there again we talk about a school. Now in this case, there is the students of Wailing Priol have been moved or have been asked to move 5 kilometers away, and the parents in an desperate move, they approached the CM and they said that the students are patronizing the government school, and if they have to move 5 kilometers away, they will have to leave the school and look for alternative.
Yeah, so the point here is that this is a burning issue. It is linked to the issue of merger of schools also, because where the Chief Minister of course is finally saying, see, what has been happening is many of the schools are closing down because there are no students, and they're merging the schools with other schools that are far away. So the people whose schools have now closed and for students whose schools are now merged with a school far away will obviously have to face the difficulty and hardship of going to those schools. So of course that is my issue, is that if you can have a proper infrastructure to get the students to go from one place to the other, maybe more buses have to be put into place, more incentives have to be given for them to go, or have a proper midday meal scheme for them to go. Either you do that, or you talk to the students and the parents mainly and reach a consensus before announcing the merger, so that it doesn't come as a surprise to people.
Okay. And the last story that we will look at this week is September 26th, Monday, wherein there is this story about detained Bangladeshis to be deported, and that is in the words of the Chief Minister.
Right.
Now the Chief Minister has stated that about 20 Bangladeshis have been staying illegally in Goa, and the hunt is on for more of them. And there is a caution which he has sent out to say that owners have to be careful and they have to report tenant verification.
See, tenant verification is a need which has been not only envisaged but also laid down. Unfortunately, landlords and others do not do the tenant verification, especially in say slum areas or other places where it is just not done. The point here is that if you do not do it, then chances of people who are skirting the law or antisocial elements and other people are coming in. I will not use the word terrorist or whatever, because I don't think that should be used on anybody without any proof. But one would definitely look at people from other nationalities who are coming and settling down here with Aadhaar cards and with PAN cards and getting employment. That needs to be completely checked. So construction sites, then scrap yards, all these places where which employ a lot of these kind of people need to be completely checked. Their health cards need to be checked, and we need to figure out why this is not being done. Because if you look at most Goan factories and establishments, the government is very strict on them for compliance, and they are all very well compliant. They do their best to do their compliance. But when you have smaller places, like for instance these scrap yards, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they follow any of the systems that are needed. Now they just hire people. I don't think there are any health cards. There are no verification. So it's not just about tenant verification, which itself is a big topic.
And they are not regulated at all.
But we are talking of these like temporary workers in these kind of sites, construction sites and scrapyards.
Okay, so that's all we have for you in this packed week that was. I thank my guest, Mr. Sujay Gupta, for his
Pleasure.
insights and analysis. We hope that you join us again next week. Thanks for watching Herald TV.